see my name on the blend. Guarantee it yourself, double up. You don't believe in my world, nigga, double up. We don't play around, it's a bet, laying down. Niggas didn't know me 91, but they know me now. I'm the young Harlem nigga with the Yankee sound. Came on PNG, niggas hold me down. Cooler, school me to the game, yeah, I know my duty. Stay low, stay low, blow like booty. True king, niggas don't blow like booty.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Yo, this is fun, man. Electric. It's all those things in one, which is great. And
sure.
So, you know, I think it's beautiful. It really is beautiful. And this is a beautiful moment for the culture that's about to happen right now. So first, let's go ahead and bring up Barry real quick. Barry,
Big Money Barry.
How are you?
Yo.
Yo, talk to me a little bit about just what you saw, man, in the chat.
I'm rooting for everybody black, man. I'm invested in everybody black too. Like I don't. Oh man, I'm in such, and I review the applications, and I'm still like hearing it out loud. The stuff that black people create that goes unnoticed, that goes uninvested, like just it's so much dope stuff. And when we get into the end of this and we start awarding, I'll get a little deeper into it. But man, you talk about tough decisions. Like I was just in the chat, actually, I was joking, like I'm glad Jewel pulled the judge straw and I pulled the Omar straw from the collab side, because I was already excited to be able to talk and interview with Omar. But man, after those pictures, glad I am not a judge, because I'm trying to write everybody checks. I'll be broke. My whole bank will be gone.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And so I think really quickly, just to kind of set the stage, right? Just some filler questions so the crowd gets to know you, right? What was your first business? How did you first make money? What was that like? What was that company doing? Real quick.
Man, shout out to my man O-Dub who listening right now. Me and my roommates back in college, it was actually Omari's idea. He just started painting tennis shoes. We started a kind of a clothing line called Afrologics. We started we got tired of paying so much for clothes, so we just started painting on white t-shirts. And then through that, we started painting our shoes to match our clothes. And the shoe company ended up being a company called Slushy Kicks. We would sell to the shoes we would buy Air Force Ones and then sell the customized shoes between like $350, $500. And we ended up getting in a boutique. And Big Boy, the week he dropped the I Got That Perp album on 106 and Park, went to the boutique, bought a purple pair of shoes, and was at 106 and Park with his feet up with some bright yellow socks on, showing our shoes, and our messages just went crazy. Like, hey man, y'all shoes on TV right now. And after that, we got into the boutique heavy, and we went brought on another one of our friends. So it was four of us: Omari, Khalid, his little brother, Mario Taylor, myself, and then we brought another guy, Ty, who was connected into the influencer industry, and he brought Carlos Boozer, LeBron. We got Tip. I made a snowman pair for Jeezy, Jagged Edge. Like, we just went nuts, and we're like sophomores and juniors in college when the blew a bunch of money in Miami. Didn't know shit about starting businesses. It was our first entrance into like really understanding that money is just an idea, and if you have an idea and you go out and put time and effort into it, and you go out and execute with that time and effort, like you can actually make money and make a living. And from that, all of us have been entrepreneurs. All of us, most of us are still entrepreneurs. And yeah, man, you just needed that one little piece to really get you to get a little piece of bite of that apple to get you fully engaged. And I haven't turned back since.
I love it. Look, without further ado, man, let's go ahead and bring up the man himself, Omar Wasow. Omar, are you there? Let's see.
Yeah, here.
How are you?
I'm good. Is the video okay, or do I need to turn off the virtual background? Because it seems like it might be a little laggy on my side.
You're a little laggy on my side here. If everyone in the chat, if he's good, put a 1. If he's not good, put a 2. Let's see what we get here. That's a little harsh, isn't it?
I say you go with the green.
Yeah.
Oh, you're way better.
Yeah, go with the green, man.
It's
super smooth now.
Way better with no background. Let's see here. Okay, so he switched his background. If he's good now, put a 1. I'm seeing a lot of 2s, but I think let's see if it catches up.
Yeah. I think we're good now.
You're good. You're back.
Okay.
All right.
All right, let's stick with that.
I'm gonna let you guys go. Omar, a pleasure to meet you here virtually, sir.
Absolutely.
Let's get out of here, man. Let's go take some notes, Trayvon.
See you. Absolutely.
Oh man, Omar, great to meet you. Great to see you.
Likewise, Barry. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. It's not every day that you get to interview one of your heroes, man. And like being a I would say young. A lot of people in the chat will probably call me old. But if I'm their OG, you're definitely my OG, right?
Yeah, I think of OG as original geek. So like we're like in the same kind of like family here. Like,
hey, I'm right there with you. And I know that Scooter touched a bit on your background. I just wanted to do a really quick, because I know we probably have some young people out in the crowd. So I want to do just a really quick couple line background, then we're going to jump right into some questions. Cool. So for you all that do not know, talking with Omar Wasow right now, as Scooter mentioned, he's assistant professor at Princeton Department of Politics. But long before that journey, he founded a company called Black Planet, which many of you may not know was really the original, I would say, true what we see today. And as social media, there were a couple of like pre-web social media, which he was also a part of that phenomenon as well. But what we use today in Instagram and Facebook, this was kind of the beginning of the building blocks. And a lot of people go back to the MySpaces, and those people really looked at what he did and what his team did with Black Planet to build on top of. But more than just that, he also went and picked up a PhD, in African American studies. He went and picked up a couple of master's degrees in government studies, and just a couple of undergrad degree in African American studies. And these are from schools like Stanford and Harvard, just some normal schools that everybody goes to. But this is a phenomenal person, man. Just somebody I've looked up to as a technologist, and as somebody creating innovative technology and starting businesses for a very long time. And as you guys can tell, I'm a little giddy because I'm super excited to be in this conversation. And Omar, I'm going to go back all the way to the beginning of your journey. Really, I won't even call it your journey yet. I'm going to go back to the beginning of your household, right? You grew up in a household with civil rights activists, right? I mean, you grew up already betting on everything that was cultural, right? Like you were already just born into that environment. And I just want to talk a little bit to shape the rest of the conversation about how did that shape your world growing up in that environment?
So it's a great question. And I would say maybe there are kind of two things that I feel like really shaped my growing up, right? So one is the sense of being, a child of the civil rights movement and having that as a legacy to honor and try and continue and live up to. And at the same time, also trying to kind of cut my own path. And when I was in college, this is Stanford, just as the internet is starting to take off, I looked around and I didn't see models of what a kind of next generation civil rights movement would look like. And in many ways, I was more inspired by the folks who were like Spike Lee, who was an artist and an entrepreneur. This is again early history, but like he had his own fashion line, right? You were talking about your sneakers a minute ago, and he had a retail store in Brooklyn where I lived and was selling lots of T-shirts and hats. And so like that was a model of kind of marrying activism and creativity and entrepreneurship that seemed more inspiring than a lot of what I saw in the more traditional political and nonprofit kind of organizations. And so I kind of came out of college wanting to honor that legacy, but also thinking that maybe entrepreneurship was a way to kind of do a lot of good in the world. And so, and one other example just in was the Body Shop founder had a book where she talked about all these ways in which they were using their company to do things like voter registration. And I just thought, this just seems really compelling because you have all the resources of a company and then this platform with which to go out and do good in the world. And so that idea of this kind of like hybrid activist entrepreneurial venture really appealed to me. And right out of college, I got hired into a program where we were trying to teach entrepreneurship to ex-drug dealers. Like, they had experience as entrepreneurs, and could they go legit? And then after a year of that, went and started my first company.
Yeah, it's amazing what happens when you put a really good business behind someone with a really good heart and that wants to do well in the world. I mean, sky's the limit. And but before we jump all the way into the college years, want to go back, you know, to that living room when you were a little kid. And as I go through your background, and one of the reasons I wanted to go deeply into your background and your intro is because not one thing says technology. Now, I know how big of a geek you are.
Yeah.
But I want you to walk a little bit through that early story about like what your first computer meant, like what having the right tools as a young person, like what that did for you, and how that molded yourself being able to matriculate through all the things that you did in the future.
Well, I think one other really important thing to know about just the good fortune I had as a kid was that my parents were both educators. And so when I was, you know, I'm you know, probably your parents' age. And so the technology that was like consumer tech at that time was things like Atari, you know, the kind of precursors to Nintendo, the precursors to, you know, Xbox. And all of my friends had Atari game machines, and that had the great advantage that like you had, you know, this incredible video game player in your home. It had the disadvantage that it was it was like a sealed box. You plugged a cartridge in, and there was very little in the way of actually like learning how a computer worked. And my parents, being educators, saw my passion for video games, but instead of getting me the Atari or this kind of like just a machine that can only play games, they got me a very inexpensive computer called a VIC-20. This was like, $100, and it plugged into a TV. That was how you did it then. And the really radical difference between the Atari and the VIC-20, even though they were kind of comparable in terms of like price and form, was the VIC-20 had a keyboard and you could program it. And it was really transformative for me, because where before for years I had loved playing video games, the VIC-20 allowed me to go from being a player to a programmer. And so there was a magazine called Compute, where each week I would get each month I would get a set of programs I could type in, and you would learn by doing, and you would learn by kind of like trying to reverse engineer, like, what is this line of code doing? And I became a really serious programmer, and I did it not because I had a fancy computer and not because I had a fancy education. It was like a $12 magazine subscription, but that really allowed me to tinker, kind of break open that sealed box and learn what was going on under the hood, and to have that transformation from player to programmer, from consumer to creator.
Man, that's amazing. I mean, this is one of the things that really drives me currently, is just trying to figure out, like, how do we as a community get these tools into the hands of kids at that young age where they're really absorbing things at a fast pace. And so when I read that about your story, I was like, this is just like a perfect example. And it's not just you, right? It's even many of the white, you look at the Bill Gates, his family being able to get him a computer at a young age. Steve Jobs, like Steve, look, many of the people that we look up to, they had these computers at a very, very young age. And now we're in that generation where everybody has a computer in their hand, right? And so I just think that part of your story is really inspiring for the opportunities that we have today, and what I think that we can pull off with this next generation of potential innovators.
I agree with one detail, which is I think there's a funny way in which the history of these things is there's a little bit of a kind of a period where the technology is kind of messy, right? And let me draw an analogy. In the early days of a car, in order to drive a car, you also kind of had to be a low-grade engineer. You had to be able to tinker in the engine and fix it. Right. And now when I drive a car, there's like 100 computer chips in there. I don't touch any of that. I just drive it, and somebody else is the expert, right? And the same thing happens with computers, where there are these moments where you kind of have to be a tinkerer to understand what's going on. And so that allows people like me as a kid to get in there and play. And then there's a moment where it starts to become really kind of complicated, and in some ways only the experts are really using it. And so there's a weird way in which the cheaper computer that I had as a kid, the less powerful computer that I had as a kid, was in some ways better to learn than a state-of-the-art Windows or Mac computer now, because in a way it was like it was almost like having a box of Legos. It was something I could play with and understand, as opposed to having something that was like so sophisticated that you couldn't even know where, as a tinkerer, where to start. And that's not entirely true, because of course people build tools on Windows and Macs that allow you to tinker. But it's like if your experience of technology is it's Facebook, you're not ever customizing your page. You're not ever doing things that encourage you to learn HTML, right? And so that's a little bit of how there's a bit of a paradox of power, where we have this everybody has access to really incredible stuff now, but we need to figure out how to create sandboxes that encourage kids to tinker.
Yep, 100%. It's pretty much the premise of Malcolm Gladwell's book Outlier. Timing is such a big part of a lot of this stuff, right? And so if you're born into that generation and you can get a computer in the house, that's where a lot of these innovators were born. And I want to transition that into kind of your first foray into social media. Not quite Black Planet yet, but what were you doing at home in New York with a bunch of modems, getting people hooked up, basically trying to battle AOL?
Yeah. So just by way of background, because a lot of people don't even know this moment, right? Like, people talk about social media like it's a new thing, and basically from the beginning, when people connected computers, people have been socializing on computers, and that's taken different forms. But there was a moment pre-broadband where the way we kind of socialized on computers was you had this box that plugged into a telephone, and it called and made lots of beeps and chirps, and then connected you to a network. And at the time, so I had grown up playing on those and loved the social aspects. And in fact, just to kind of go a little bit into the vault, right? Part of what drove me crazy in the early days of the internet was people kept talking about it as the information superhighway, right? As if the thing that was going to get people excited about the internet was some giant stack of books. And I love libraries, but I knew from my own experience that a lot of what was exciting about this technology was an information kind of supper club. It was a place to hang out, not just a place to look at documents, right? So you think about even the language, right? It's a web page, and yet what really blew up was social. So in any case, I had spent a lot of time hanging out in these kind of what were then called bulletin board services. And when I came out of college and finished that work teaching entrepreneurship, thought, I think there's an opportunity for a different kind of online space, and founded a company called New York Online, which was trying to, my metaphor was, we're like the subway. We want to bring all of New York together. And we're a network that brings all of New York together. And so set up, 20 phone lines in my Brooklyn apartment. And, the phone company thought I was running a phone sex operation. They were like, what's going on here? And I'm like, no, this is too small an apartment to do that. I have 20 phone lines that are just plugged into these modems. And off we went. As you noted, we were this micro competitor to this giant America Online, trying to offer something that was, more reflective of my experience, which was much more in technology, which was much more diverse. And it succeeded to a degree, but we sort of launched just as the web was starting to take off. And so in some ways, the whole era of bulletin board services, like with AOL, began to just get superseded by the internet and the web. And so that we had to adapt.
That's exactly why I brought up that first one, is because this is the pivot and pitch competition. And I feel like with what you were working on, and then you dropping the the super highway on top of what you were doing with 20 modems. People in the crowd probably know what a modem is. But what you were doing at such a micro level, and then you dropped the internet right on top of that around the same time, and you had to pivot, right? You still wanted to be, your community's been a big part of your life, your entire life, and you still wanted to go into that community space, but now you had to do it on this new thing, right? And this new, faster thing. And so let's talk a little bit about, and I want to go through this quickly because I really want to talk about your now and kind of where you're focusing now as well. Let's talk a little about those early days, like what really pushed you to jump into Black Planet. And then also I want to touch a little bit on like how you actually built it, right? Because now a lot of the people on the call, we have API libraries, we have frameworks to build on top of. Like nothing existed when you built Black Planet. And so just talk a little bit about the reasoning behind why you built it, and then kind of some of the structural things about how you actually went about it.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So let me underline a point that I made before, which is that like the web was fundamentally like a static place that you surfed alone when it took off, right? And people would hack it here and there to make it a little bit social, but like we really had to do a major kind of rethinking of what the technology was to add a social layer to this solitary, again, static, like load a page of text kind of technology. And so we launched in 1999, and the lead programmer was a guy named Mike Montero, who was just a remarkable programmer. And he, along with the team, really was able to add a social layer so that like people talked about, so these are subtleties that just, people now will think, what's the big deal? But we had a little asterisk that would appear next to your name when you were like logged into the site. So as you were browsing profile pages, right? This is Kevin Durant's Black Planet page, right? I mean, this is, you get a sense of how pervasive it was in its moment. And so you would surf the web, you would surf our pages, but you would see that like somebody was on the site. And people would tell us like they would log in the morning so that their page was lit, right? They had a little like asterisk next to their name because they wanted people to interact with them, and that whole experience, or even let me make it even more basic, right? On our homepage there was a login prompt that said there are 20 when we first launched, there are 57 people on the site now, and I remember a friend of mine saying like, don't you want to cut that because people are going to come to the site and they're going to be turned off. It's like an empty dance floor if it's not that many people. And what he didn't anticipate, this is like week 1 or 2, is that like the thing was going to grow exponentially, right? So we started to have thousands and thousands of people online simultaneously, and just there was no equivalent of that for African Americans, right? You could go to America Online, but there was never a free tool, suite of tools where it was like chat and messaging and profile pages and message boards, like all of that for free, in a way that was like easy to use for the Black community, right? And so people were skeptical of what we had, partly because they thought, no, social isn't where it's at, right? It's the information superhighway. People were skeptical of us because we were small, right? We were going up against Black Entertainment Television, BET. We were going up against Microsoft had a product with BET. AOL had products, right? So there's just like there's no reason anybody should have bet on us. And we had the best technology and trounced all of them in terms of traffic and kind of cultural pervasiveness, right? So we definitely led with the right model, heavily social, heavily like shine a spotlight on our audience, give them tools. And then just to touch on one more detail of your question around like what was kind of central to that technology, a lot of our competitors had kind of offerings that, they offered maybe a chat service and a profile page, but it took you like 5 clicks to get between those because they were gluing together 2 different third-party products. And we had built our own technology and could make it like really seamless to like move around through all that stuff. And so, getting from whatever it was, 3 clicks to 1 click meant people used our product so much that when we initially launched, we had $1 million marketing campaign set up, and we pulled the entire campaign and put it into server capacity, because basically our growth curve was we added server capacity and it spiked, and then people maxed that out and it flatlined, and we added more server capacity and it spiked again. So So that was both exciting and terrifying. And then let me get at one other detail of your question, which was like you're exactly right. We were kind of hand building a lot of this stuff. Like there weren't off the shelf libraries, and that meant that some of those like plateaus were also, we were pushing the technology as hard as anybody had ever pushed it, right? I mean, again, a dynamic web page now might not seem like much, but to have hundreds of thousands of pages that are being custom built on the fly was a pretty radical thing at the time. Again, like, you know, the asterisk near your name means that page is dynamic. It's not cached. If you're on the site. And so like some of the things we, you know, I remember we spent, I think it was $100,000 for a 1 terabyte drive, you know, and that was like, you know, I mean, again, it's industrial strength, not consumer grade, but I just bought, you know, an $89 5 terabyte drive, right? So it's like the level of kind of infrastructure we had was just radically different. There wasn't off the shelf code. Like we had to cobble together all kinds of infrastructure that was like, you know, there wasn't the kind of level of cloud computing. So it was just much more expensive, much more labor intensive. And thankfully we had a great team and the audience really like loved it.
Man, the whole time you were talking, I was just like, imagine if they would have been able to save that $1 million for marketing and just scale up their AWS at a rate down.
Yeah.
So we have a couple minutes left, and I really want to jump into your. I could do this all day. They should have gave us more time. Oh man, Scooter, I need like 20 more minutes, but I'll keep to your time frame.
Yeah, keep going.
I was going to just really quick. Nah, I'll skip it. I'll text you after this.
No, ask it.
Okay, because this is probably a little selfish, but through this process, you became known as like the technology guy, especially in our community, to the point that you ended up on the Oprah show for like 12 episodes, pretty much teaching Oprah technology. Just like in 2 sentences, just describe like how was that on stage with Oprah on TV, teaching her how to use technology.
You know, they maybe they can bring up the slide of that just in case anybody. What does that mean? So we did a 12-part series called Oprah Goes Online, and you know, and they wanted some technology tutors, and I'd done some TV work in the past, sort of helping to explain technology on TV. But what was nice was they really wanted to make a show that was trying to help. You have to understand, this is a moment where like people hadn't yet sent their first email, right? So literally there's a whole 30-minute show where it's like Oprah's going to send her first email, and so like, but because it's Oprah, you know, like they get her inbox populated with you know, here is you know, I mean, obviously Gayle King, but they got a bunch of other celebrities, you know, writing her, and then she opens one that's like from Bill G at Microsoft.com, and she turns to me and she's like, Omar, does everybody get an email from Bill Gates the first time they go on the internet? And it's like, no, you know, and just you, Oprah. And she had this idea that it was like, you know, you're coming into his living room, right? It's like the internet, that's where Bill G lives. And so that was great fun and an opportunity, most importantly, going back to the story before about like my experience with that toy computer, the VIC-20, was I had this, you know, transformation of going from being a consumer to a creator. And with Oprah, she went from being deeply skeptical of like, why are they making me do this 12-part series, to by the end, she was like, everybody was breaking down the sets and she was still like at her computer banging away. And so it's partly like a thrill to see her get the bug, but also her platform is so large that it was a way for us to sort of say to all of these millions of people who might be low tech, hey, this is a place that you are welcome. And whether it's like shopping or sending an email or doing a search on, you know, then Yahoo, like these are things you can do and it's going to make your life better. And that for me is like a really important part of like my kind of personal mission, is like not just how do we do cool tech, but how do we do it in a way that really is helping improve people's lives.
Yeah, that was amazing, man. Like seeing that and just understanding how far we've come. But I got 2 more questions for you, and I want to transition into like your post Black Planet. You run it. It sells, and then you make this transition and kind of just say, all right, technology, it was a good run. We had fun. but I'm going way over here. And you go back to school, you get more degrees focused on race relations and economics and, communities of color. And you just kind of go in a totally different, I won't say totally from your history, because obviously your past tells us that this is something you're passionate about, but what you have been doing the last 15, 20 years, you kind of just left that there. And want to talk a little bit about why you made that transition and why it was so important to the work that you're doing today.
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think a simple way to approach this from kind of an entrepreneurial perspective is that some ideas have a business model and some ideas don't have a business model, right? And so if your question going back to whatever it was, 1998 or something, was can we give free email to the world? Then there's like a natural business model in something like Hotmail or some of the other products that came up, right? And you can sort of take that idea and productize it and monetize it, and boom, you're off and running. But other questions or other ideas like why did we see incarceration rates spike in the 80s doesn't have a natural business model, right? And it might be that there are businesses to kind of spin off of that, but some ideas really lend themselves to other kinds of contexts. And for me, trying to understand, going back to that initial question you asked about kind of what does it mean to be a child of the civil rights movement, I was really passionate about trying to understand the rise of mass incarceration. And I just didn't see a way to run a business around that. But there was a natural path of going back to school and trying to go deep on those questions and trying to understand what in our history, essentially what in the wake of what, how did we go from having all of these successes of the civil rights movement to a period in the 70s and 80s and 90s where things really seem to go off the rails for maybe the bottom 40% of Black folk. There's a middle class that's doing really well, and that's wonderful, but there's a bottom half that's still struggling. And so that was that was what really was like the animating question for me. And so going back to get a PhD in African American Studies was a way to kind of work on that question.
Yeah, and that's this is where my true passion lies too, and I've been trying to find a way to encapsulate that and fix that through what I know, which is as an engineer, which is technology and how to build companies. And a lot of what you just talked about is kind of the foundation of why we started Collab, right? How can we use what we have, but go into figuring out how do we get this level of innovation and accessibility into that lower 40% that's struggling. And now is such a great time, in my opinion, because, and you kind of mentioned it earlier, that a lot of this technology stuff is now being commoditized, right? And so if you need people that can sit in a server room and work in that server room, but you have to have a limited small level knowledge of technology to do that job. But we can train 500 people that didn't have that training before to do that. We can train people to, so I feel like it's just this opportunity to bring that part of the community, not just into technology, but also into entrepreneurship and into digital marketing and into things where you can start a business and get in front of 30 million people, if you can get the right access, right? And so I just think that where we are now, and I'll ask you this question as kind of a final question. You were starting kind of pre-internet, you saw the internet grow, you've obviously been around to see kind of what we've done now, kind of this next generation of innovators and founders. What are the biggest and most important advancements that you think have been made from a technology perspective as it pertains to the socioeconomic status of communities of color? And then what opportunities did they create for growth in our communities that we can use to build on top of?
Well, so I mean, it's a great question. It's a tough question because there's so much change happening right now. To pick the one thing is hard. So let me on a tough one. Yeah. So let me speak a little bit to kind of 3 or 4 things simultaneously, and let me just kind of set it up for a second, right? So one, the gift of this moment, as horrific as coronavirus has been, particularly in the Black community, is we're seeing the potential of online teaching and the limits of online teaching in a way that I think has never been fully appreciated, right? So I teach at Princeton, and I'm just now looking through evaluations, like literally before this call, was looking at comments from students, and a number of them said, like, this, you know, there were a bunch of things we had done in that class, a website for the course, you know, online video as well as live. I mean, there's just, that made it a pretty good experience for them. And so that's one thing that's interesting about this moment. We know that access to quality education is an enormous challenge for African Americans, but not just Black folk. It's an enormous challenge for people all over the world. And so, you know, I wonder about what is possible now, given that there are a lot more people paying attention to ed tech. The infrastructure is there to potentially do it at a level of quality and scale that's never been done before. And I think people are more realistic about what is it good for and maybe what is it not good for. And going back to your point a moment ago about also employment opportunities, it's really clear that, like, there's like a full employment future for anybody who can get a certain level of tech skills and can stay curious enough to kind of keep up with those tech skills, right? Like you're gonna, you know, it's not that you won't ever get fired. It's not that you won't have to move for a job, but, like, you know, people who have a certain set of skills are you know, they can have a middle-class life. And so that's, like, exceedingly exciting. And yet there's this enormous challenge of, like, how do we get our schools to deliver the kind of education that prepares kids for that future, which they're not doing now. And how do we use these technologies in ways that really, like, improve the quality of education, which is also still, you know, not happening. So I'm both really excited about the role of technology in education, but I'm also really cautious because I've seen it misused in the sense that it's like, we've done lots and lots of wasteful things with technology in education. But because of this particular moment where you know, the whole country is in some ways experimenting with computer mediated learning, there's an opportunity for us to maybe make some real progress on that front, and to do it in a way that might allow kids who have only have access to, you know, inadequate resources, you know, maybe not the best teachers or maybe not the best school, to maybe have better access to kind of world-class education. And that's, you know, we're definitely not there yet, but that's, I think, part of the promise of what a really leading edge set of ed tech could do in our community, particularly if it's done with real intention about getting people to, you know, and then say one last thing here. I think too often the way technology education has worked is like, we're going to teach you Microsoft Word, or we're going to teach you PowerPoint, and those are great skills to have, but that's not being an engineer, and that's also not being even a writer, right? In order to write a good sentence, you need years and years of training. So learning Word you could pick up maybe in a week, but learning to write might take a decade. And I think we need to think about technology education as something that's like years of apprenticeship, years of tinkering, years of learning. And that doesn't mean you can't get a job now, and or you know, but really technology education should be beginning in kindergarten. It should be, you know, age appropriate. It should be learning to think a little bit like a computer and learning to think a little bit like a programmer. And it should continue for a decade. And it's not something you take for 1 year as an elective in high school. And so it's a different model of, you know, thinking about computer literacy as a core part of what it means to be engaged in modern life. And that's and so I you know, bouncing around there a little, but I think there is an opportunity at this moment to really sort of offer more opportunity to our community using these technologies, but also trying to rethink education more deeply and computers in education more deeply.
100%. I'm so glad you hit on ed tech, because even outside of K-12, I think, you know, teaching somebody that's running a bakery, you know, digital marketing, right? Even though it's not actually being an engineer writing code, but just teaching them these things, they need a little bit of technology. I just think that education part of it is going to be so just important to us as a community coming into, you know, this new decade. And if we don't get it right, like, this is our chance to get it right for our community, to dump money into these resources in our community. And if we don't get it right, I don't know, back to the timing thing, I don't know when we're going to get another opportunity. And so we have to take this opportunity to really look at how do we do education online? How do we train people with just not a full technical stack, but how do we get them that one thing that they need for their business to take it to the next level? And so, yeah, they're about to kick me out. I could do this all day. Omar, thank you so much for spending time.
Thank you. Really grateful for the opportunity
with me today, but also the other people that are watching and Scooter and Trayvon as they come on and mess up my moment. No, but thank you so much. I know everybody enjoyed it. Come on, Scooter. Come on, Trayvon. It's all right. You guys can come in the room. Okay, we're done.
Thank you. Appreciate it. We can come to the big kids table now. Thank you.
Phenomenal. I think, we have a poll going in the polls for people who, who like just asking, who knew that much about Omar. And there's some thoughts in here around giving you a Netflix documentary. I think even getting that on a Black-owned streaming platform. But your story needs to be told more, I think. And, just very humble and very grateful that you were able to take some time out of your busy schedule to come through. And so hang out.
Thank you.
No, thank you. I seriously, I don't even know what to say. Like, you have any last words? I mean, before we go off, like.
Yeah. One more.
Just like the key in my story is I went from being a consumer to being a creator, right? From a player to being a programmer. And our agenda has to be, how do we help everybody else go from being consumers to being creators?
Whew.
I'm glad I asked. I am glad I asked. I'm glad I asked.
Mic drop. Mic
I love
drop.
it. Okay. Omar, hang out backstage. Go see some winners, man. Barry, we'll bring you back up in a second. Woo!
We'll see.
Trayvon. I wish
Yo.
Okay. Let's focus here because we got some big things.
No. Let me tell you, because emotions are real, bro. You know what I realized? Like, we've done all of this virtually, bro. Like, when I see you, dog, we're gonna hug, bro.
High five you, but I don't even have that capacity.
This is crazy. But listen, we have decisions. Deliberation happened. We have some winners. Like we did it. We're here.
So really quickly,
about to post some money. It's gonna happen.
Backdrop of how this all went down and what the timeline looked like. My sister was joking and saying that our acceptance rate was less than some Ivy Leagues, which was pretty cool. But we had several hundred applications come. I think it was funny to watch in the last probably hour. It went from one number and added another 100 within that hour, just because of people submitting, at the last minute and the last moment. We took those applications. And they were sent to our selection committee, right? So we had a selection committee of people that Trayvon and I didn't even know, honestly, but these are proven entrepreneurs, business leaders, community members from across the country who selected and kind of screened down to a top 10. And, from there, those top 10 all had calls with the general partners from Collab, right? Just to talk more, have more of an interview and more in depth. And then from there, we got a top 5. And we announced those top 5 last night. The top 5, they probably knew they were the top 5 yesterday at probably 3:00 Eastern. And then we did a tech rehearsal, bringing up their decks. So as you can see, they're moving fast. The pace is fast. And so I just want to really talk about, we announced that the total prize money being $50,000. And we knew that we would have a first place winner, a second place winner, and a third place winner. But we have a surprise. So for those who did not make it to the top 5, right? So places 6 through 10, we have cash for you.
Let them know.
We have cash for you. 6 through 10, everyone in that little bracket is getting $1,000. So the top 10 are not walking away alone, which is amazing. I think that's just phenomenal. You put in the hard work, you get your application. I think rewarding courage, right? Rewarding perseverance, rewarding just that boldness. And so just like that, $1,000 going from places 6 through 10. Tammy from the Collab team will be in touch with you. If you're in the chat, congratulations. That's amazing. I think it just proves why you should always apply and put your name out there. Now we have 3 people back here in the backstage, which means there's a 4th and a 5th place. And again, another surprise. The idea was for 4th and 5th to get also $1,000, just like the places 6 through 10. But we have more cash and another surprise. So for the fourth,
bring him up. Where is he? Hold on.
For the fourth and fifth place, let me go ahead and see if I can bring them up here. Instead of getting $1,000, you're going to actually receive $5,000 each. So that's a huge jump from $1,000. You're getting $5,000 each for fourth and fifth. Let me see if I can bring it up here. Boom. Does that work for you? Boom. So Julius, Patrice, $5,000 each, fourth and fifth place. Everyone, please give them their roses in the chat. Talk to them. Talk to us. This is amazing. They did an amazing job. And again, they didn't know this. They didn't know coming into this that this was even an opportunity. So this is amazing. So thank you to Patrice and Julius. Go visit their companies in the expo. Now,
absolutely.
Let's bring up Barry again.
Where's Big Money Barry?
Barry's back on behalf of Collab, man. Let's talk about it, Barry. Now, Barry, I don't need you to pull, Teddy Riley. Your internet's been good tonight. I don't need you to pull a Steve Harvey and do some, so I need you to read this off clear here. But no, look, let's get into it.
Hold on. We got to bring the team up. We got to bring the whole team up. We ready. We ready. Let's do it.
Gang. I'm excited.
Barry, it's on you, man.
Real quick, Scooter, before you jump, about that other money, just talking about speed and timing and like how fast this stuff moves. We made this decision to throw some extra money in yesterday. And so going back to like putting our money where our mouth is, like shout out to our partners. Like this thing was moving fast, but the amount of talent that was in this competition was so high that we couldn't let some of these other people walk away with nothing. And that was just the top 10, guys. Like we struggled getting it down to the top 80. Like this was an extremely competitive. And so I just wanted to make this one note before we get into this top 3 to all the, again, I'm going to throw it out there. We said we're going to throw the number out there, but to all the 420 plus applicants, Black innovators with companies that are dope, that apply within a week of having 5 team of us putting it out on social media. We had 420 plus Black innovators apply to this competition. And the amount of dope that was in those applications is freaking phenomenal. And I wanted to say that, just to say to those other 400 plus people that didn't make it, you guys were phenomenal as well. Like keep building, keep going. There will be other opportunities. Collab is here to set a precedent. We are here to hopefully open other people's eyes so that they also start to come on this train and do things like we're doing for people in our community, because the opportunity is here. This is not a charity. This is an opportunity for investors to make money. That's why we're in this. We want to help community, but we're in this for the business side of it as well. This is opportunity to invest in companies that are also making a better world for our community. I'm gonna get off my soapbox, but I had to throw that out there. And like, just congratulations to everybody that sent in an application. We see you, we heard you, we have Collab Studio, we still have resources, we are connected, and we will try to help as many of you as we possibly can. So kudos, thank you for applying, and congratulations.
One more shout out to our sponsors. Color of Change would not be able to be here without you. Let's go ahead and get into it. Let's do the announcements, folks.
Let's do it.
All right. Here we are. We're here. We're at the moment. I want everyone to know how real this moment is, just because we are all at home, y'all. Like we are all home and we're having a pitch competition. Like this is just wild, bro. Like this is just amazing. But Jewel, I actually want to give you the honors since you were our judge. So I feel like it is only right that you let us know, starting from 3, of course, who our winners are of this pitch competition.
Oh, all right. I'm like, I don't know why I'm nervous right now. I'm so excited. All right. Okay. Hold on. Let me make sure I got my names right. I don't want to Woo. All right. In third place, this person will be receiving $7,500 in non-dilutive cash dollar bills. They will also receive investment consideration from Collab Capital, and they will receive support as they continue from Collab Studio. So, in third place, can I get a drum roll? Script Help.
Let's go.
Woo!
Drop it.
Let's go. I love
Congratulations, man.
So thankful for such a wonderful opportunity. And I absolutely love the mission. And we are so thankful to be a part of this. So really appreciate you guys for all your hard work.
Thank you.
Bravo.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much, man. You killed it, bro. You killed it. You killed it. You killed it.
Keep up the great work.
All right, here we go. Here we go. Here we go.
Okay, y'all, this was so tough. The judges had a really hard time with this 1 and 2. It was very, very, very close. Very, very close. All right, so the second place winner receiving $10,000 in non-dilutive cash money is
Money in the bank.
Hey,
that's you, bro. I love it. I love it. I love it. What's
Keep
up,
it
man?
I'm on mute. Thank you.
Nope. I love it.
You know we're gonna do great things with the cash, man. We're really excited for you, man. This is
Awesome job, Andrew. Seriously.
Beautiful,
appreciate
beautiful,
it.
beautiful. Nah, you got it. So without further ado, there she is.
Let's go, girl. I told you, yeah.
There she is. Smile for the camera, girl. Smile for the camera down here.
Come on, man.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yes.
I love it. I love it.
What did I
Hey,
say?
you were phenomenal.
Yes, what did I say? What did I say?
I don't know if you can see the chat, but the chat was booming.
That is booming. Yeah. You killed it. Y'all murdered it.
What the heck? That is so nice. It took me a sec. I'm glad the camera didn't see me at first. I was like hyperventilating. Thank you. What? Y'all are amazing.
Hey,
Thank you.
live in the moment. Congratulations. Continue to.
No, congratulations. Congrats. For sure.
You and your team are amazing, and what you're doing is important.
How much this will help our business. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. And it's going to help so many survivors. Like, I don't want to get emotional, but it's going to help so many breast cancer survivors. And it's really going to impact the lives of so many women. I'm so grateful for you all. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. People like you are the reason we wake up every day and do this work. Like, this is phenomenal.
No, I love it. I love it. Thank you. Thank you. Let's get Scoop back up here. Nah, man, you got to deal with the emotions too, bro. We're here. So
That was amazing.
So, to wrap, right? Today again was absolutely amazing. Just from the bottom of our hearts, right? Collab, thank you all for just believing in our team, right? And when we were like, hey, we have this idea, and you all were like, okay, let's run it. And just the sprint, right? We know that you all have other things, many other things that we were doing. So the fact that we did all this in the deep depths of the night after doing all those things is just amazing. So thank you so much. Just from the Quarantine Com team. Another special shout out to the great folks at Color of Change. You all are doing amazing, amazing work during a time when our community needs it the most. So thank you so very much for your contribution here. But not only that, how you're bringing people together and ideas together for the culture, for the community, for the nation at large. So with that being said, Scoot, I'm gonna let us talk about a little bit more about like what's going on with Quarantine Con and how we're moving forward, some of the ideas we have in the queue, just our call to action to the community that's here today. So I'll pass it to you for that one.
No, thank you so much. This was great. I think 8 weeks ago, leading up to this moment has been amazing, and we've only gained more and more steam. And so you're going to see more events. We've got another one coming this Thursday, which we've been planning in tandem with this, which is going to be really exciting, dipping into the music world. So I'm excited to bring on some really powerful people in that space and talk to them. We're going to start a series on Sundays, which I'm really excited to talk about very soon, and understanding our role in the next election, right? Not just the national election, but the local elections as well, and making sure that not only are we coming together in thousands for pitch competitions and culinary showcases, but we're also going to show up to the polls when comes. So very excited for everyone. And again, you can always reach out to me and Trayvon on Instagram or just through email to talk about planning the next events. I think, the last 4 or 5 events now have been planned, not just by us, but with other folks. And so it's beautiful.
Sure.
We want to keep that going. That's all I got, man. That's all I got. I think right now we're going to end it with networking. So everyone go hit the networking tab.
Wait.
Oh, there's more.
There's more. I have to say thank you. There's so many people that we have to say thank you to.
Yes.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
I got a whole list, so y'all got to bear with me. All right. So it was mentioned we had a selection committee that helped us do a quick turnaround on those 400 plus applications to get down to the 10. So please, thank you to Charlton, Mike, Steven, Megan, Kelly, Justin, Jody, Denisha, Britt, Benjamin, Brandy, and another Joey? Yes, and Joey for helping us with selecting companies. And thank you so much again to our judges, Ryan, Maisha, Mandela, and Donald. We had to battle it out to figure out who was going to win because the companies were just so great. So thank you so much for donating your time. We want to thank again Color of Change for contributing to our prizes. Thank you so much for putting your money where your mouth is. We appreciate that. Another big thank you to Omar, the OG in the game, for spending his Sunday afternoon with us and dropping gems left and right. A huge thank you to the Collab Studio team, and a special shout out to Tammy. If y'all in the chat,
Tammy, get the moment. I love it.
Tammy deserves all the love. If you thought this was a well-run event, it is all because of Tammy. So thank you so much, Tammy, for all the hard work.
Tammy for president. Yes,
Tammy for president. And then I want to thank the Quarantine Con team. You guys, look. Let me not get emotional here, but you all put a fire under us. We like to think we're like, y'all's big sis, big brother, but you guys really put a fire under us to get some things done quickly. We're so inspired by what you guys have been able to do in such a short period of time. So thank you for partnering with us on this and, helping us fulfill our dream of giving money to Black people. That's what we love to do. So thank you for that. Who else? Is that everybody? Oh, and one last thank you to everyone who applied. I want to underscore what Barry said. Y'all, when I tell you the applications were so good, the companies are so freaking incredible. And it just, honestly, this is like why we do what we do. Wake up every day, focus on how we can help Black founders. This is the reason, because there are so many incredible founders out there. Again, if you did not make it to the top 5 or the top 10, please do not stop what you're doing. There were so many incredible applications, and we are here to help you move your businesses forward. So please visit us online. Make sure you stay in touch with us. If you're sending out updates, make sure we receive them, because we really want to be there to help you grow your business. And with that, I'm done with my thank yous.
Wait a minute. When you put some money up, you can get another 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Scooter.
I love it.
Scooter, I was going to say this earlier, but we were running a little bit behind. But
No, go ahead.
for those of you that don't know, like to Jules' point, like Scooter's been like a little brother, just like one of the dopest young entrepreneurs that I've met. And I only say this because he already put it on IG, but like a couple weeks before they started Quarantine Con, I sat across from Scooter. He wanted to have some lunch and talk about like job advice, what he was about to do next, career, like is he gonna move to California? Like we just having a like the big brother, little brother moment, and we got hit by a freaking pandemic. And he didn't cower, he didn't run away. He showed up 2 weeks later and put like 5,000-6,000 people in this thing called Quarantine Con. And just want to kudos to you, man, to make that transition.
For sure.
And also talk about collaboration and mentorship. And so if you are one of the older people that's in this chat, your conversations, your time spending with the next generation is it puts out things like Quarantine Con, right? It puts out things, it lifts these young entrepreneurs up to do fantastic things. And so kudos to you, Trayvon, for jumping in, man. Like you guys are fantastic. I'm glad to say that I'm a part of the journey with you guys, and just thank you guys for partnering with us on this event, man.
Nah, thank you. Nah, for real. Thank you.
Drop mic. It's been beautiful. It's going to continue to be beautiful. Let's go make it happen. Everyone go meet everyone. So go to the networking session, go meet, go talk about companies, go talk about what you're working on, go to the expo, go listen and learn from all the other companies. And that is all for today. Oh, one more. No, let's keep it.
I'm sorry. I'm just scrolling through the chat and I'm seeing people talk about how can they invest? How can they, reach out to the companies? Please, y'all, these companies need more money than we could provide today. So please do not hesitate to reach out and find out. We are happy to make the connections for you. So if you saw something that really piqued your interest, please do not hesitate to reach out. Also, I have to give a shout out to Collab Capital, which is still fundraising. So if you are interested in being an investor in the fund, we will be glad to speak to you. But yeah, just want to make sure we make that call out because we do not want $50,000 to be the only amount of money that changes hands today. We want to see y'all doing deals. So please make it happen.
No, I mean, I think that you bring up another great point, but that's the point of the community that we see at large and the opportunity we have here. We talk about this all the time, Trayvon and I, it's more than just giving money, but also like, man, how could someone in the crowd today be one of the first pilots for Jax, right? Or how can someone who is connected go give a lot of good press to Andrew at Lifted, right? Or how can Cherry Blossoms now go, have a great business-to-business relationship with another, corporate partner because someone in the chat sees it and wants to invest in it, right? Not just marketing and following on Instagram, but really wrapping around the people that we want to reward for their hard work. So this was a great example, MVP pilot of that. Of like, there's capital resources, but then there's this kind of social capital as well that comes out of the chat and out of the community. So spot on. Okay, let's do it.
Ready? Where's Big Nate?
See you guys at networking.
Congrats, Nate.
Big Nate.
Hey, let's go.